Tonight, President Trump holds his first cabinet meeting of term 2 with Elon Musk in the room.
There is a large group of people in this country that have such admiration for what we're doing.
From government cuts to immigration to the war in Ukraine, how his administration is charting a new course. Plus, heartbreak in Israel as thousands gather to mourn a mother and her 2 young sons, their final farewell, and the new developments in the hostage deal. And a spiritual awakening sweeping college campuses.
I don't think I'd ever experienced that type of love from God before.
The prayer movement that's uniting students and faith leaders across the nation. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. President Trump charging ahead with his domestic and foreign agenda. Good evening in Washington. I'm Jenna Browder. Today, President Trump convened his newly installed cabinet for their first cabinet meeting. After it opened in prayer, Trump gave the floor to Elon Musk to talk about the DOGE efforts. And he attempted to clear up some of the recent drama about emails to federal workers.
What we are trying to get to the bottom of is we think there are a number of people on the government payroll who are dead, which is probably why they can't respond. And some people who are not real people, like they're literally fictional individuals that are collecting paychecks. Well, somebody's collecting paychecks on a fictional individual, so we're just literally trying to figure out, are these people real? Are they alive? And can they write an email?
Those people are on the bubble, as they say. Maybe they're going to be gone. Maybe they're not around. Maybe they have other jobs. Maybe they moved and they're not where they're supposed to be. A lot of things could have happened.
President Trump praised Musk's efforts and said federal agencies should begin planning to eliminate positions, saying it's a reduction in force. Agency leaders have to submit their plans by March 13th. Well, a major win for Trump's agenda. House Republicans have narrowly passed a spending bill after a hard-fought battle. The big question now is what's next? CBN's Michelle London is on Capitol Hill with the latest. Michelle?
Well, Jenna, this budget resolution aims to cut at least $2 trillion in federal spending over 10 years' time. It also includes at least $4.5 trillion in tax cuts to extend Trump's 2017 cuts, which expire at the end of the year. Other additions include $300 billion for border security and national defense. House Speaker Mike Johnson calls this victory the first step toward passing President Trump's sweeping legislative agenda in the big, beautiful bill that he campaigned on. Now, this budget bill has received resistance from both sides, with one Republican and all Democrats voting against the measure. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries called the Republican budget reckless, with tax cuts catering to the wealthy while sticking everyday working Americans with the bill. Republican Congressman Thomas Massey explains why he voted no.
We are cutting taxes and we're not going to cut spending to match it, so the deficit's going to go up. That's what this bill does.
This bill will now head to the Senate, where Republicans passed their own budget last week. Their approach splits Trump's agenda into 2 different parts, one on border security, energy supply, and defense to pass quickly. The second deals with taxes, and it wouldn't come until later this year. Given those differences, it will be interesting to see how these 2 versions can be amended into a bill that can go to the president's desk. Jenna?
All right, Michelle London on Capitol Hill, thank you. And for more on this, let's bring in CBN News Chief Political Analyst David Brody. So David, getting this spending bill out of the House really is a huge win for Trump. Can you explain why and what this means for his agenda moving forward?
Well, sure. In a nutshell, it's a carnival. It's a circus in the House, and Jenna. And for them to actually get this passed is remarkable. Remember, they could only lose one Republican, and they did, Thomas Massey. But other than that, they got this done. And this is the one big, beautiful bill that Trump wants. Now, remember, to be clear, this isn't a bill. This is the framework for a potential bill. That's the budget reconciliation. And that is where this gets much trickier and harder. As a matter of fact, if we all thought that the hard part was last night, on Tuesday night, passing this by just a couple of votes. Yeah, that's the easy part. The hard part is now going to be trying to figure out exactly what to cut. $2 trillion of spending cuts. Where is that going to come from? And we'll see whether or not the House and Senate can get together and actually put one big, beautiful bill together.
Yeah. President Trump, he had his first cabinet meeting today. David, former White House press secretary under George W. Bush, Ari Fleischer, he put it this way. This isn't a cabinet meeting, it's a news conference with members of the cabinet as witnesses. David, what did you make of the cabinet meeting?
No, I think Ari Fleischer is right on. I mean, it's must-see TV. I mean, Trump is the most transparent and accessible president in American history. There's not even a question about it. I mean, he just opens up the cabinet meeting. Remember the days, Jenna, when it was a pool spray, 2.5 minutes, okay, get out, get out, get out. Trump's like, come in, come in, come in. I mean, this is what he does all day long. It's just fascinating. So I just thought that Ari Fleischer is exactly right. I mean, he just took questions like he was at a press conference and he's like, oh, by the way, the cabinet's just like sitting there, just kind of twiddling their thumbs, waiting for this to end. So, obviously important work's getting done with the cabinet, but that's going to be behind the scenes. Trump just loves to play to the cameras because he knows he owns the room when that happens.
Yeah. In the meeting, he did talk about downsizing the federal government. And
Yes.
David, we saw a memo go out today from the administration. Thousands of probationary workers have already been let go, and now the focus really shifts to career officials. But, David, many of these career officials, they have civil service protection. How do you see all of this going?
Well, here's where I see it going in a nutshell. It's one word: lawsuit. Make that plural: lawsuits. Because many of the unions in this country for federal workers are already suing. They sued right when Trump put that executive order. I can't remember how long ago was it. A couple of weeks. I'm getting it all confused. But a couple of weeks ago, Donald Trump, in essence, made it easier to fire federal employees and strip some of those civil service protections. And so they're in court over that already. There'll just be more lawsuits after what we are about to see transpire between now and March 13th. So this will end up in the courts. And, look, I just think this is going to go on for quite some time. I don't think we're going to have full resolution soon.
Yeah. These cuts, David, they're a very local story for this area, the Washington area, and they affect the people, in our community around us, our neighborhoods, our churches, our kids' schools. It's really created a lot of uncertainty for a lot of people here. And all that to say, how do you think these cuts are playing in other parts of the country where the federal government looms much less large?
Well, look, I think there's a couple quick factors, and I'll try to be brief here. You've got polls that show that DOGE itself is very popular among not just Republicans, but even some Democrats actually approve of the actual cuts to the federal budget and to agencies in terms of what they're doing. Now, when it comes to the federal workforce, we haven't seen specific polling on that. But obviously, that's a much tougher hill to climb. So I think that's where Democrats can take advantage of what's going on here and play to the emotional aspect of this. And I think you'll see Democrats do quite a bit on that with the federal workforce. And quite frankly, the old back in the 90s, throw granny from the cliff, that type of thing, in terms of Medicaid cuts and, how Democrats are going to say that Republicans are going to go throw senior citizens overboard, throw granny from the cliff. I think you're going to see that emotional aspect as well. So this is where Democrats feel they can make some progress.
Okay, David Brody, we'll leave it there. Thank you, David. Always good to see you. Well, a new Reuters Ipsos poll shows President Trump's approval rating is holding steady at 44%, even as his administration slashes federal jobs and shifts U.S. policy. Meanwhile, Democrats are really struggling to find their footing after President Trump's reelection. David did a story for us on that.
We will win. We will win. We won't rest. We won't rest.
Just like this clumsy attempt at a rallying cry, Democrats have appeared uncoordinated and off track since President Trump's election victory. Party leaders like David Axelrod realize the ground has shifted.
The Democratic Party has in some ways become too much seen by too many Americans as the party of elites and institutions that have failed them. I worry that the party of working people, the self-styled party of working people is perceived by working people as elite and
it's not for
disdainful and removed from their experience.
Polls show it's the GOP now more in sync with Americans on top issues like the economy, taxes, and immigration. That disconnect brings with it a 57% unfavorable rating for Democrats. Longtime party influencer Roland Martin, however, says don't count them out quite yet.
People who are saying that they're in disarray, that's a level of silliness.
And the reason I say that is we always see these stories after there's a loss.
But Martin does acknowledge a communication problem.
Democrats' messaging is horrible. And that is, what they've done is they've passed things, they've supported things that actually benefit the American people. They don't talk about it.
Still, the embrace of leftist ideas has hurt them with the blue-collar base.
If you're Democrats, you have to recognize where people are and now begin to say, hey, either I'm going to stand with, push that hard and suffer the consequences, or I'm going to have to somehow recalibrate.
It's left Democrat politicians with a choice in attempting a strategic comeback. Some are taking the road less traveled, like Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer trying to find common ground with the Trump administration.
I don't want to pretend we're always going to agree, but I will always seek collaboration first. I won't go looking for fights. I won't back down from them either.
Others, like Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker, remain never-Trumpers, using provocative rhetoric.
The seed that grew into a dictatorship in Europe a lifetime ago didn't arrive overnight. I'm watching with a foreboding dread what is happening in our country right now.
Two different strategies, but not a true plan. That makes for a bleak future. It's projected that in the next 5 years, liberal states like California, Illinois, and New York will lose congressional seats due to a shrinking population. Conservative states like Texas and Florida are expected to pick up seats.
So you've got to have a much more aggressive Democratic National Committee. It's understanding they've got to stop listening to these overpaid consultants and pollsters who don't understand people.
And that was David Brody reporting. Well, the White House is boasting major wins on the immigration front. Illegal border crossings hitting a 15-year low under Trump. Under former President Biden, they soared past 100,000 monthly, peaking at over 300,000. Senior Washington correspondent Tara Merchiner joins us now. Tara, by the numbers, it appears the strategy to deter illegal crossings is having an impact.
Yeah, it sure seems so, Jenna. Some major number shift here. Now, the Trump administration is ramping up enforcement with measures like reviving rapid deportations, pressuring Mexico to take back more migrants, and expanding detention facilities. Cartels are also shifting smuggling routes in response. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem announced that on February 22nd, only 200 migrants were apprehended at the southern border. That is the lowest single-day total in more than a decade. This drop is attributed to the administration's aggressive enforcement measures, including the deployment of additional troops and the suspension of asylum applications. Just last month, Border Patrol reported approximately 29,000 apprehensions, a sharp decrease from 47,000 in December, right before President Trump took office, and a 77% drop compared to January 2024, when it was 176,000. Now, meanwhile, President Trump plans to introduce a gold card visa program, allowing foreign nationals to obtain permanent residency in the U.S. with a $5 million investment to generate revenue to help reduce the national deficit.
The people that can pay $5 million, they're going to create jobs. They're going to spend a lot of money on jobs. They're going to have to pay taxes on that too. So they're going to be hiring people. They're going to be bringing people in and companies in. And I don't know, maybe it will sell like crazy.
As for those here illegally, DHS has also introduced penalties, including fines and potential jail time for migrants 14 and over who failed to register with the government. Now, as illegal crossings plummet, border communities are feeling some relief now, with many shelters reporting fewer of them. The White House says more border enforcement actions could be announced, Jenna, in the coming weeks.
Okay, Tara, thank you very much. Up next, a painful goodbye. Israel lays the Bibas family to rest. Plus the fight to bring home more hostages. Welcome back. Israel is a nation in mourning. Today, finally laying to rest Cherie Bibas and her two young sons, Ariel and Kafir. More than 100,000 people lined the streets as their bodies were taken to a cemetery in southern Israel, not far from their home. Many donning orange, the color of the children's hair. Shuri, Ariel, and Kafir were abducted on October 7, 2023, and taken to Gaza. They were brutally murdered by Hamas. Shuri's husband, Yarden, was also taken hostage, but he was released earlier this month. Today, he eulogized Shuri, Ariel, and Kafir and reflected on their final moments together on the day Hamas attacked their home.
Do you remember our last conversation together? In the safe room, I asked if we should fight to surrender. You said fight, so I fought. Shiri, I am sorry I couldn't protect you all.
Shuri, Ariel, and Kafir were buried together in a single casket. Meanwhile, new reports say Israel will free more than 600 Palestinian prisoners Wednesday. Israel held up their release for several days in protest of Hamas's mistreatment of hostages. The terror group has agreed to quietly turn over the bodies of 4 more hostages at the same time. President Trump says Ukraine's president will be at the White House on Friday to sign a major economic agreement, one that could give American companies access to Ukraine's rare earth minerals. The White House has framed the deal as a way for Ukraine to repay the U.S. for billions in military and financial aid over the last 3 years. Trump says the deal would be worth trillions, but details remain unclear. Ukrainian President Zelensky calls it a preliminary framework and wants security guarantees from Washington before moving forward.
This deal can be a big success, or it can fade away quietly. Much success, I believe, depends on our conversation with President Trump.
And this deal follows weeks of pressure from President Trump, who has repeatedly called Zelensky a dictator and engaged in peace talks with Russia without Ukraine at the table. Trump insists he can end the war in weeks, but Zelensky remains skeptical, warning that Russian President Vladimir Putin has no intention of stopping the fighting. Up next, a movement of prayer. Students nationwide unite for the Collegiate Day of Prayer. See how revival is sweeping college campuses after this. Tomorrow is Collegiate Day of Prayer, when students, pastors, and leaders will unite in faith, praying for transformation at their schools. It comes amid a spiritual awakening sweeping college campuses nationwide, fueled by various campus ministries. According to InterVarsity, Decisions for Christ rose by 33% last year. The Fellowship of Christian Athletes reports its highest number of salvations since the pandemic. And the international ministry, Cru, recently surpassed the 1 million mark in commitments to faith globally. Tomorrow, join us in praying for revival and watch this special event live from 8 to 11 p.m. Eastern on the CBN News Channel and our digital platforms. All right, with that, we welcome Ty Lamb. He joins us now. He is the executive director of the Collegiate Day of Prayer. Ty, welcome. Good to have you with us. So we've seen revivals happening all over college campuses lately. How does this prayer movement tie into that, and what are you hoping to see tomorrow?
Yeah, no, thanks so much. It really has been such an incredible season of ministry to college campuses, and since Asbury, we had Collegiate Day of Prayer Asbury 2 years ago, and just what God did there that sparked just these seasons of revival on campuses across America has been so incredible. I mean, just even this last week at Ohio State, there was a gathering of about 6,500 students, and almost 2,000 students responded to the gospel. They spent hours afterwards in the back of box trucks, in cold Ohio, Columbus, Ohio, baptizing students for hours. And so week before that, Kentucky. And so we're praying that just even as we're gathering a couple thousand students at Texas A&M tomorrow night and across America and across the globe for this moment of prayer, we're just trusting that what we're seeing at Ohio State and Kentucky and A&M would be just a normal story of what God's doing across America on campuses across the globe.
You know, we know past revivals have really shaped entire generations, Ty. What do you believe God is doing right now through young people, and how could it impact the church at large?
Yeah, I mean, we are convinced that what we're doing in engaging the next generation, specifically like 18 and 22-year-olds on college campuses, is so significant. I mean, from history, one of the revelations they had was, as the students go, so go the nations. And as God is moving and marking just these young adults who are being formed spiritually, their worldview is being shaped, they're being launched into a trajectory in their lives, we believe that as these students are getting marked by Jesus, that for the next 30 and 50 years, I mean, who they become, what they do, it will shape the trajectory of America and the trajectory of the nations as God impacts and touches just these young adults in these formative years.
So tomorrow, what does it look like in practical terms? How do students participate if they want to on their campus?
Yeah, our hope and faith is that students are engaging in prayer for their campuses, but more than that, we want the church, the mothers, fathers, pastors, church leaders. We're believing that every campus in America and then campuses across the globe would be adopted in prayer by local believers, by students on their campuses, and by churches that are in proximity. And so what we're asking and inviting everyone to do is to adopt 3 campuses, one campus that's near to your home, one you go to school at, one that you live by, a college campus that's near to your heart, one that you went to school at, where you have kids, children that go there, and then a college campus that's in a foreign nation. And as you adopt these 3 campuses, our invitation is that whether you're a student or a church, that you'd be praying for these 3 campuses tomorrow, whether individually or if you gather a small group of friends, or if you, and then that evening of tomorrow night, 7 to 10 Central Time, join us on CBN for the broadcast, our global broadcast, where we'll be leading believers across the globe in united prayer for revival and spiritual awakening amongst 250 million students.
Okay, Ty, we are looking forward to it here. Thank you so much, Ty Lamb with the Collegiate Day of Prayer. Thank you. And still ahead, basketball history in the making. That's next on Faith Nation. Finally tonight, a collegiate athlete is making history on the basketball court. Bailey Cinnamon Daniel played high school basketball for 3 years before she was cut from the team. But that rejection, or the fact that she was born with just one arm, didn't stop her from carrying on her dream in college. The 22-year-old guard became the first Division III women's basketball player with one arm to score a basket during a game.
So playing basketball with one arm is definitely something that is difficult, but also has instilled a tremendous amount of determination within myself.
And Bailey says she hopes her story will inspire others with that same determination. Good for her. All right, that's going to do it for Faith Nation this evening. Thank you for joining us. Have a great Wednesday night. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Take care.